Hey folks, welcome back to Chris Wide Africa here on the Indaba Africa channel. This is Chris, live on YouTube from Central Pennsylvania. That's right, some of you folks know who I am, Chris Wyatt, retired U.S. Army Colonel. And today on my special feature on a Friday, Lekker Lekker Freitag, is we've got a very special guest. I'll bring him in just a moment. But before we get to that, I've got to just do a little bit of housekeeping and let you folks know that I have scheduled Renee Kruger to come on the channel this Tuesday, the lovely Boermeisje from South Africa, who will be talking about Heritage Day and the attacks on Afrikaans and Boer culture that have been taking place right in the midst of Heritage Day, which we celebrated last week. If you watch my stream, folks, I apologize. It's blocked. I can't unblock it. YouTube is not editing the video. I keep editing it day after day, so my apologies for that. But on Heritage Day, we celebrated three different cultures and languages and ethnicities in South Africa. I focused on the Tswana speakers of South Africa from Northwest and the Free State, as well as the Basotho people, and of course, Afrikaners and Boers. That was my focus. Didn't have time to do 11 different languages and all the different cultures out there. So that was a focus for Heritage Day. So Renee will be on the channel, but today I have a very special guest, and I'm going to apologize in advance. There seems to be, I don't know if it's the ANC's got drones flying around his property or what's going on, but there's kind of noise feedback. So we'll do the best to get the best signal we can in here. But if you're having difficulty hearing it, my apologies in advance. But hopefully you can hear it over the buzz or the din of the zzz that's going on in the background. But we're going to get him in right now. This is a veteran of the South African Defense Force, former prisoner of war in Angola, a veteran of the Bush War, and a prolific motivational speaker, a published author, a farmer, having farmed in Central Africa, in Congo, Brazzaville, as well as in South Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to delay this any further. Let's go ahead and bring in Wynand du Toit. Excuse me, I almost mispronounced it. Wynand du Toit. Welcome, Wynand. How are you? Waiting for his mic to come on there. There it is. All right. Wait up.
Good evening, Chris. Now it's going well here in South Africa. We are sitting in the middle of quite a cold front, stormy weather, raining here where I am at the moment. But apart from that, we are all well.
Well, that's excellent to hear. But listen, hey, let's get started on something right off the top of the show here, Wynand. I've got to sort this out, okay? Now, I think that I have an error on the description of this video for this stream. So if I do, I'm going to apologize in advance, but I get conflicting information, and you and I have not had a chance to talk in advance. A lot of things say that you retired as a major in the South African Defense Force, but I understand that you actually retired as a lieutenant colonel.
Chris, yeah. But people remember me from different stages. Some people remember me from when I was captured, when I was a captain. I became a major when I was released. So a lot of people call me still captain today, and some people still call me major. But I actually left as a lieutenant colonel.
All right. Well, excellent. Now, that's important. Now, you know, as a military man, you know that's important because we got to sort things out right off the get-go here, Wynand. So for folks who are unfamiliar, I retired as a full colonel. So I will be pulling rank now and then during the conversation with my guests because he retired as lieutenant colonel. So we just got to get that straight. I'm not sure he knows how to react to that one. Anyway, so no, just kidding along, folks. What's that?
That's fine.
Just having a crack there. But seriously, let's go ahead and get started here. So you're from South Africa, obviously. You grew up, what part of the country did you grow up in?
I grew up in the West Coast, close to, not far away from Saldanha Bay, and which is not far from Cape Town, in an area which they call the Sandveld. I can't say that in English, I don't know what it is. But in the Sandveld, and I went to school in the small town of Hopefield on the West Coast, and yeah, after that I left for my national service. I actually never did national service because I joined the permanent force immediately upon leaving school.
So did you grow up on a farm, or was your family engaged in something else when you were a kid?
No, my father was a farmer, a wheat farmer, and had some cattle and sheep and horses. And yeah, I had a very, very happy childhood, far removed from all the things in the world. But we were close to the Air Force base of Langebaan. And that's where all the pilots was trained to fly jet engine aircraft. And of course, I grew up wanting to be a pilot, just to find out in my final year that I'm actually mild colorblind.
Oh.
So that that crosses me off from the pilot course. So I joined the infantry, went through all the necessary courses, did my instructors and officers courses, went to the border, and then I attended the military academy for 3 years, which is in fact the faculty of military warfare at the University of Stellenbosch. And I graduated in 1981. And during a beer festival in October 1981, I was persuaded, gently persuaded, to come and do Special Forces selection, which I did.
Okay, so when you say persuaded, was that after several flagons of ale, or was that early before you had something to drink?
It was actually during a beer festival, the Oktoberfest.
Yeah.
Which we held in Saldanha Bay. And after quite a couple of pins, it happened.
Well, that's why I ask, because the way you set that up, that it sounded as if not that your arm was twisted, that you probably had put down a few beers when you said, "Okay, this is for me."
Yeah, and interesting. It came as a sort of a challenge. One of my fellow students told these guys from the Special Forces who also attended the beer festival, he said, "Well, as soon as you guys can organize, we are there." And then Monday morning, a signal arrives with the instructions, number, rank, name. Where they got it from, I don't know. But everything was there, and we was formally called out to come and do a selection course. And there was no way backing out of that.
No, that's that your manhood is at risk once you're committed, but you got to go all the way, because you just can't back out of something like that. Hey, listen, Wynand, before we go any further, because I want to ask you about the selection course, people who watch my program know that I traditionally wear a rugby jersey for my live streams, and I am in fact wearing a rugby jersey today in honor of your home part of the country there. That's the Western Cape, so I've got a Western province on here. But I have to be honest, I'm cooking, because much like the current confusing situation with rugby in South Africa, I'm not sure if we're watching Curry Cup or we're watching Super Rugby. It's a combination of the two. So here's the Curry Cup, but hang on, be patient. And there, whoops, my piece came off my earpiece. Give me a moment here. I got to do a little repair on the scene here. And there's my Stormers jersey. All right, there you go, Stormers jersey. And this one's not just a jersey, it's also personalized. I don't know if you can see it there. So I'm planning on playing left wing for the Stormers next season. I'm going to try out. So anyway.
Yeah, but that's a step in the right direction. I must admit, if you had been sitting there tonight with a Bulls jersey or a Sharks jersey, I would have feel a little bit affronted by that,
Well, with good reason.
I'm saying it with a little wink, because a lot of the people watching is Bull supporters, of course.
Well,
they're big guys,
The thing is, Vine, is it everyone's entitled to be wrong now and then, so we'll allow that.
Absolutely.
So, but let's get serious here for a moment. So you got signed up after a few beers, and you went to selection. I'm going to guess that wasn't a walk in the park. It had to be challenging even as a young man's selection.
Yeah, of course. And all the preparation that we have done before the time cannot prepare you for the actual selection.
Yeah.
You can be as fit as a fiddle, but when selection starts, they throw in the things that you do not suspect or expect, like weight, time, sleep deprivation, all those kind of things. You are thinking walking and running and that type of things, but they throw in all the other stuff which make it almost impossible to behave normally. And I think once a person are put in a position where they cannot function as they normally do, it is then when you are either making it or you are losing it. And your mind got to shift with it. It's not about the strength of your body, but it's the courage in your mind. That's what is keeping you going, and that is what making you successful during selection.
Oh, absolutely. Now, not at all to compare this remotely with selection, because I know what selection's like. But in my mid-50s here, I just came back from Wyoming, where Catholic College of Wyoming sponsored a trip for special operations veterans. That would be Navy SEALs, Delta Force, Army Rangers, and asked me to come out as a cadre member. And it was a week-long expedition over 10,000 feet, so well over 3,000 meters, hiking up and down mountains, camping out there. It was minus 13 the first night we slept out there, Celsius. It was a little chilly, but I don't like to be at the back of the patrol on patrol. I don't like to be at the back, so I'm always at the first or second up there, either the scout or the guy right behind. Also, because I have long legs, and I know how people shift their legs on a march, and you wind up doing a lot more walking and marching than you intend to. But I'll tell you, it was at that altitude and carrying that pack over probably about almost 50 kilos, about 40 kilos. It was a nice change of pace, but I could not possibly not do it, because you got to man up. You got to be there. You got to finish it. You got to get your mind right. And it's really about your mind, isn't it? When you're going through selection, you've got to keep your mind right, because your body will fail you if your mind isn't right.
Yeah. But you got to watch your mind the whole period of training. I mean, once you have passed the selection, is only then you are only permitted. That only allows you to do the course, which is 42 weeks long. Of which you must pass everything, and all 42 weeks is mostly suffering, mostly hard work. And
mostly suffering, no doubt.
They always find an excuse to chase you with something. You have been talking earlier to me about Botswana. Now, we were doing our last two courses, which is bushcraft and survival and trekking. And then the last one is minor tactics, which is actually the cherry on top. But during this bushcraft and survival part, they got to find the excuse to send you to the Botswana border. Now that's 30 k's, one direction, and they gave us each a case of 60 mil mortar bombs.
Yep.
But you're not allowed to take the bombs out of the case. You got to carry the case with it. You got to put it on your neck or your shoulder and carry it. And 30 kilometers towards the Botswana border, and just short of the border, a guy is waiting for you there. And there we turn around and you walk all the way back for something we didn't do.
Yeah. No, if you'd got to fire the mortars, it would have been worth it, but you had to carry them out inside the boxes. That's crazy.
Yeah, we didn't even have a pipe with us.
So it was just to make you suffer. No, it's absolutely true. It's funny, not funny, but sad. I remember, I would say it was about, when I was at Defense Intelligence Agency. This must have been around 2004, 2005, that the ANC was angry that too many black pilot candidates were failing the qualification course for the South African Air Force. That's when General Hakano was still the chief of the Air Force. And so their solution was to bring instructor pilots from Zimbabwe. Mind you, an Air Force that had no fuel, that could only fly 2 or 3 aircraft at a given time, and had no aircraft in common with any aircraft in the inventory in South Africa. They brought them down. And their argument was that the qualification program was racist because so many black applicants were failing. I pointed out that the problem with that story is that historically in the South African Air Force, over 70% of all applicants, including white South Africans, failed the course. So very few people actually qualify for pilots. What was it like for you in the Special Forces? Was there a high washout rate, or did people tend to stick with it?
It's around about 12% that is completing the course.
Wow.
I mean, you can make it until the final day and still fail if you are mentally not well. So the psychological selection continues right throughout all the phases of the training. So in the end, they can still throw you off or say you are not suitable or this or that. But normally, if you have made it that far, you will pass. But only 12% of the initial course normally finished it.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's what I suspected. So I just when I heard the ANC use that excuse, I knew that they were full of it. When in the same course, 7 out of 10 white candidates were also failing the course. Obviously, it's not racist. Obviously, it's tough selection standards, and there's a reason for that. I mean, this isn't chicken licking. This isn't a KFC. This isn't working at Foschini's. This is people's lives, and this is national security. And you have to have the best, most fit, and best qualified.
Chris, true. And the problem is that we have found that right throughout South Africa currently, that standards are being lowered to allow more people to pass. I mean, the pass rate, no, not even the pass rate. The percentage with, that you must obtain to be allowed to go to a university is now 30%.
It's insane, absolutely insane. I talk about this all the time. Do you want the structural engineer who got 33% in maths to be the one building that bridge that you're going to traverse? Not me. I'll pass.
But exactly, but there's a problem right throughout Africa.
Yeah. Well, it's especially acute.
It is as if all the negativity, the disease of not qualifying, lowering standards, have been brought down from the middle of Africa right into South Africa, and now everything is based upon that. I mean, at the States, the one minister said, well, if you attended university and you scored 0, you can still say you was at a university.
No, absolutely. It just drives me absolutely nuts. I mean, I don't with a straight face how they can say this. Like, oh, proud we had 60% No. You had 6% graduation because you lowered the standards to 30%. If you were actually at 70 or 80% where it should be, you'd have about 12% of the people max passing this thing. Come on, be honest about it.
True. But that is a problem currently that we are facing. But I mean, even our top guys now, most of them are not after school qualifications or not many qualifications, and a lot of people have been found out that they had actually bought their degrees, their certificates and stuff. Then you can understand why the government is not up to the job. And the problem is that if they want to save South Africa, then they must appoint a competent people. But what they did immediately after 94 was to come to you and say, listen, here is the guy who is going to replace you. You must train him. Now, who will train a person to substitute you? I mean, I'm not going to train a guy with enthusiasm if he got to substitute me. It's not going to work. But that's how it played off.
No, absolutely. Hey, let me get a couple quick things here, housekeeping there, Wynand. There's a thing here from someone named Joan Shamsham. It says, hello, Colonel and Kikers. I'm subscribed to you both and wasn't notified of this video. Listen, folks, that's shadow banning. That's nonsense, or it's useless IT from YouTube. If that's the best they can do, then they're not up to the standards they need to be for their network. But I think it's shadow banning. And listen, if you have a channel that you like, that you're familiar with, you've got to check. You just got to go to the channel periodically and check. For those who know, on this channel, I do live streams every day at noon Eastern, 6 p.m. in South Africa and Botswana, and again at 3:35 or 21:35 in Botswana, South Africa. That's consistent. Now, that adjusts from time to time based on an interview I can or can't do or when I travel, but when I'm home, that's the norm. So as my channel and Wynand's channel, if you check them out, you just got to go periodically because YouTube is not going to notify people, particularly when it's a topic that the left doesn't want people to know about. And I suspect this is a topic that people on the left don't want others to know about. So thank you all for tuning in. We're up to like 140 people watching right now. That's awesome. Bye bye donkey. Ke a la boa. Really appreciate you guys being here. All right, so let's Wynand, let's get back to you went through qualification. Obviously, you made it. You're one of the 12%. You're out there. You're an officer. You wind up going to the north. Now, famously, we know that back in '75, the South Africa intervened, and we saw what happened up there, almost getting all the way to Luanda before the rug was pulled out from under the troops. And then again in 85, or 87, excuse me, in 85 and 87, another public offensive we saw. And we know about those operations. But you went. Can you disclose when you went up into the Bush War?
Yeah, well, I was actually there the first time before I became a special forces operator. I was there for the first time in 1979 with 2nd South African Infantry Battalion. And I did border duty there for 6 months. But after I have qualified as the Special Forces, we only went up occasionally to do whatever we have to do. So we didn't stick around on the border. We went back to our bases, which were in fact operational bases, like the one there where I used to be in Langebaan in the Cape for Reconnaissance Regiment. And we operated from there because I was seaborne. We used the submarines to reach the targets along the coast, do all the reconnaissance from the submarines, and then the strike crafts, of course, and some of the frigates. So I actually did more operations from the seaward side while I was in the Special Forces than I actually did from the border side, from the land. So yes, but that's the time more or less in 82, end of 90, 82, 83, when I really worked day and night on that side.
So, it's interesting that you mentioned that because I think a lot of people don't realize just how intense this was and how long it was going on. It went on for quite a while. The activities taking place up there along the border. So you were in Southwest Africa, which is now Namibia, at an operational base, and you guys had occasional activities going up there along the border. Now, what I found interesting, what I was curious about, because I've read about this many times back in the day, of course, some of this escaped. It was public knowledge, but not widely known, that the South Africans were using their Daphne submarines to insert special forces into other countries in Africa. I don't know, places like Tanzania and Angola and places like that. So it sounds like you were one of these chaps that was actually coming out of those subs and winding up and rocking up on the shores of these other countries.
Yeah, for some or other reason, my OC decided that I'm very well suited to do submarine work. So during my time in Voorweki, until I was captured, I did almost every submarine operation. So in 1983, for example, I was at home for less than 3 weeks in total. For the rest of the time, I was always aboard a submarine or a ship, but mostly submarines. A submarine is not a nice thing. You must remember a Daphne submarine can fit into one of the gymnasiums on board one of your nuclear submarines, probably. 67 meters long with a crew of 51. And then when we came aboard, we are also 65 people. So we couldn't even stand up straight, all of us together in the submarine at any one time. So, yeah, the hotbank system, you know that. People came, when they go on shift, they stand up and the guys that's coming off is going into the bunks. But to an extent, I like it. And that was actually the third book I wrote, was about the Daphne submarines. Because somebody asked me, but why? Why the submarines? I said, because 95% of my special force operations was done from a submarine. And you grow very attached to a group of people like this because they are also very special people. I mean, think for yourself, being stuck in that tube for 32 days without seeing proper sunlight or a harbor or anything, without brawls and fighting and arguing, and the strict discipline and how the guys maintain it. It was absolutely incredible to me. And up to today, I'm still very good friends with most of the submariners that I knew over that time. And there's something mysterious about a submarine also, and especially when you're doing operations at night from a submarine, you know that you are invisible most of the time. And when the submarine come to the surface at night time, you must spend as little time above the water as possible. So it's always a race. I think the best we did is to get the two rubber ducks with all the equipment and the engines, who got it up and running and submarine submerged from the moment that they started surfacing until the moment that they dive, less than 12 minutes.
No, it's okay. In the interest of full disclosure for you, Wynand, I've got to tell you that in high school here in the U.S., they give this test. It's a aptitude test for the military. It's called the ASVAB, the Armed Forces Vocational Skills Test. Anyway, so every student takes it. I took that in high school. I think it's my junior year, the year before you graduate. And the Army and the Air Force didn't come sniffing around. It was the Navy recruiter that came looking for me, and he said, "Listen, hey, now let me put this in context. This is 1981." We have 26% unemployment in my county, so not unlike South Africa before COVID-19, but 26% unemployment. I did own a farm. I worked on a farm, so I had nothing that I was going to work after I finished high school. And he comes to me and he says, "We can offer you an enlistment bonus of $20,000. $20,000 in 1981. It's a fortune. I mean, today that's probably like 150,000 US. So I'll say, let me do the math real quick with the ANC, what they've done to the rand. $150,000 US, that would be 6 trillion rand, I think that comes out to. But
almost.
No, but seriously, 20,000, and he said, "Okay, but you're going to be a submariner." Now, I was not fully grown. I was still growing in high school, so I was about 5 feet, I think 9 or 10 inches, and now I'm 6 feet 2, but considerably taller. But anyway, he said, "Yeah, so you'll be in a submarine. It's an enlistment for 6 years." I'm like, "Whoa, a submarine? Oh yeah, you go to sea for 6 months at a time. It's really cool." I'm like, wait, under the water in a submarine. And I can't go outside. I don't see the stars. No. I'm a farmer, man. That ain't going to work for me. So I passed on $20,000 because, beware of the guy in the van offering you candy. He was offering me candy, and I took the pass on that. I never did that. That was not my interest. I wound up in the Army later on, but the Navy tried to get me first.
but you know something, man.
Yeah.
We guys, we like to braai. You know braai.
Yeah, of course. What was National Braai Day a few days ago, or also known as Heritage Day?
Yes. And no matter where we were on the submarine, but once a week we braai. We will surface a submarine far out from the coast, and from somewhere half a drum will appear miraculously with legs. There's no place in a submarine, but that will appear. And make a fire, and the guys will be on the deck, and they will braai. That's the only difference.
No, that's absolutely brilliant.
So, yeah, it's great. It's great.
So listen, there was a couple comments here I want to bring in from the chat. So Andre Jacobs is hot on this, and I have to thank Andre for, which isn't his real name, I don't think. I think that's a pseudonym, but he's in China. He's currently on the island of Hainan, where the Chinese have stolen our intelligence collection equipment from the EP-3 that was down there after their ludicrous pilot flew into our aircraft back in 2001. I want my intel equipment back, China. Anyway, just saying. But that's where Andre's currently out on the island of Hainan, because he works in China. And he keeps asking this question. It must be an inside joke. So he says, "Who's had their condensed milk coffee today?" I don't know if that's a joke for me or it's a joke meant for you. But I see the smile on your face. Maybe it's meant for you.
Yeah. Okay. There's two stories. In our red packs during the border war, in the red pack was always either a small tin of condensed milk or a tube of condensed milk. But then in the morning, first thing that you make after you've gone through all your drills and stuff was to make coffee. And condensed milk was the only milk, but it's also sweet. So you don't put in sugar, you put in condensed milk in your coffee, and then you sweeten it up. And actually, every day it's a little bit more sweet depending on the situation. And on my broadcast, every morning, I tell the guys, enjoy your condensed milk coffee. So even if there's dark times ahead, like we are facing in during the wartime, the condensed milk is at least sweetening the things up before the time. So no matter how big the challenge, you can still have something sweet before you tackle the challenge. But the story of the submarine, and of course, I received this morning a message from some of the floaties from Simonstown who said, but listen, we are also doing condensed milk coffee on board of the naval ships. And said, no, okay, but that's great and it's fine, I remember that. But it didn't stick in my mind as sharp as being in the bush. But a submarine is a different thing. The stove, for example, are extremely fast and became very quickly very hot. It's not like a conventional stove at all. So one night, one of the recce guys wants to make himself some caramel. Mm-hmm. So he sneaked into the kitchen, switched the stove on highest power, no chef visible or in the vicinity, and he put the condensed milk in a bucket of water on the stove. But because it was so quickly, the water was gone before the condensed milk was finished, and because before the timing on the guy's watch was passed, so the next moment there was a hell of an explosion in the kitchen. Mm-hmm. And everybody ran to the kitchen, and this tin of condensed milk has actually exploded. And the whole kitchen was dripping with condensed milk from the roof and everywhere. And yes, until today they didn't find the culprit. And some guys say it was me. I was on board, yes, but I can promise you today it wasn't me.
Okay, good enough. Well, that explains all that. So, hey, folks, you are listening to Chris White Africa on the Indaba Africa channel. I'm Chris, live in central Pennsylvania. And my special feature guest here on a Lekker Lekker Freitag is none other than retired Lieutenant Colonel Wynand du Toit, who is from the old South African Defense Force, former prisoner of war in Angola. We're going to get to that here shortly and talk a little bit more about the Bush War. But there was a very good question that came in just a moment, well, not a moment ago, but a few minutes ago from Erica, because we're talking about the subs. Since we're talking about the subs, she says, I wonder what Wynand thinks of the current state of our submarines. Those would be the Type 209 diesel submarines that the ANC felt it absolutely necessary that they purchase under this, what was supposed to be a $4.6 billion U.S. Arms deal that turned out to be actually $7.1 billion. So Type 209 diesel submarines, thoughts?
Yeah, Chris, I don't think I'm qualified to comment on the current status of the South African military, and it shouldn't be the right thing to do. But we must bear in mind that there is still very good guys around, and that the submarines often went out, and we actually saw them quite recently on the southern side of Hermanus, and everybody taking a photograph reported back on social media that was a Chinese nuclear submarine, and I just shook my head and say, guys, just go and have a look at the profile of our own submarines. You don't see them so often anymore as they used to be, but they are there. On the state of it, people must bear in mind that one submarine will always be in the dry dock, busy on a maintenance schedule. while two will be at sea, and they will rotate basically. But there was some incidents that has happened, not serious that I'm aware of. So I was never on board one of these neo submarines. So yeah, I'm not qualified to comment on that. I think there's still guys that's doing a good job.
Yeah, no, I'll offer some commentary on it because I actually got paid to be an analyst to cover that sort of thing, and I'm familiar with it. They're great submarines, actually. They're very effective. They're used by multiple naval forces around the world. The Germans make excellent construction of those submarines. They were built in Germany, and that's where the crew went to train. But the problem that the South African Navy has is that because of their quota policies, they're unable to adequately staff and crew the submarines full time. So as Wynand said there, if you're in the military, you know that 1/3 of your force is always in recuperation, refitting, and is out of the mix normally. And so one of the subs should always be either in dry dock or being repaired or renovated and updated. That's just normal process. So at best, you're going to have two at sea, but it's rare that we ever see two of those things out at sea. And in fact, these days, it's uncommon to even see a single sub out at sea. But I suspect that has a lot more to do with funding and to do with COVID-19 than the quality of the mariners involved.
Yeah, I think we should ask the question whether South Africa at this stage and time needs submarines. I think that's the more important. We shouldn't have bought them in the first place.
I agree.
Because we have scaled down on the land forces, we have scaled down on the air forces activities, and we should have done exactly the same with the Navy. Because you can't let the things lie there. Maintenance is taking a hell of a lot of price tag. And with the financial situation that the South African government is in, I think we will now see a very quick deterioration in the status of both naval vessels as well as military vehicles generally, because there's just not enough money to maintain.
Well, actually, that was my argument against the arms deal when they first proposed it back in the late 1990s. My argument was that why are we buying Gripen fighters and interceptors and Hawk lead-in fighter trainers, Type 209 diesel submarines, 3 corvettes or cruisers, depending on who classifies them, but 3 capital naval ships, when actually the African National Congress under Mandela and then under Mbeki was using the SANDF to go to Ethiopia, Eritrea, to go to the Congo, to go to Ivory Coast, to go to later Central African Republic, Burundi. It's using ground forces. Why isn't the investment going into the Army, whose barracks need to be renovated, whose soldiers need better medical care, who need new prime movers, pickup trucks, buckies, things like that? Why aren't we updating that stuff? The Army was totally neglected in that acquisition plan, and it shows. The Army cannot do a lot of things it needs to do today because of the neglect. Barracks falling apart, discipline a challenge. Now, that's not to say that SANDF is just broken. There are pockets of excellence in this force, but on the whole, the state of readiness is abysmal.
Yeah, and with the ISIL threat that is coming down from Cabo Delgado in Mozambique, it will be expected from South Africa to get involved.
Yeah.
Because South Africa used to be a main force in this area, and even if the United Nations say, well, we've got to send in troops there to stop this ISIL advance, they will still approach South Africa to go and do the job. And even if they got some sort of finance to cover them to go and do the job, I don't think they are capable anymore of stopping this infiltration from that side. So we are in for some very difficult times ahead. If we look at that threat that is coming down from that way, so it's difficult. It's difficult because South Africa is involved almost everywhere in Africa, and there's very few left in South Africa itself.
No doubt about that. So, hey, folks, take a second, reach down there just below the window. It's not hard. It's right down there. I think we have an really interesting guest today. Just smash that like button. It costs nothing, not a single rand. Just smash that like button. We're close to 100 likes already. Thanks a lot for that. By the way, so it's I think fascinating, but what's been going on with the SANDF and how they've been used. Let's not get into that right now. I want to shift it, go back a little bit, and talk about, because we have about a third of the time left, and we've got a lot of topics to cover. I want to get back to when you were in Angola. So you went there, you were on a mission, you wound up being a prisoner of war, which was probably not a great publicity thing for the National Party in South Africa.
Well, it wasn't exactly a great publicity act for my own career, you know.
Well, I'm sure that probably didn't do well for your career. Good point.
Yeah. And I can assure you that it, from my side, it was definitely very far away from my mind that it was possible that it can happen with me. But yeah, we did an operation called Operation Argon in Cabinda, and interesting. We were supposed to attack the Cabinda Gulf Oil Company, which is a United States property. Mm-hmm. And I think that up to that stage, the United States was our only backstop in the Security Council. They always used their veto vote to protect us. Either they or the British, but mainly the United States, especially under Reagan. And I think that was one of the targets. I mean, it should be a target. It's a very important target. It provided Angola with 73% of its income. But the point is, there was a hands-off situation on that installation. There was a sort of a silent agreement that we won't attack American property. In the end, it did happen. And I was captured there, and it caused a hell of a racket and back and forth. But if you read my first book, Judas Goat, you will see that I'm saying certain things which people don't like. Many people don't like it, but I say that we got to ask questions. Why were we sent there? Why were we forced by the planning to lay a day ashore, spend a day ashore, while we could have done the operation in one night, coming in from the sea? After all, we were seaborne, coming in from the sea, do the operation and depart. Later on, the question came up with me and said, well, wasn't this operation specifically selected so that the United States must take away their veto, so that more pressure can be put upon former President P.W. Botha, the old crocodile who refuses to change or refuses to let go, and who have warned South Africa about what would happen if we give the control over to the masses in South Africa. He warned about that. And I think there was a great understanding between him and the United States president of the time. And it was not long after that he was actually forced out of his position, and when the F.W. de Klerk part of the cabinet came into power, because the cabinet was always split in two. There was the conservative part of the cabinet under P.W., and then there was the more liberal part under FW. And then you got the guys in the middle who played it towards whoever suits them the best, like the Botas and those kind of guys. And by putting this pressure onto PW, eventually forces play a part to start with the negotiations and to start the process of releasing Nelson Mandela and to scale down the war. Because you must remember the New York Accord was signed in now I must think very, very carefully, 1986, December 1986. But before that, there was another accord signed in Brazzaville, Congo, called the Brazzaville Protocol.
Right.
And the Brazzaville Protocol was a direct flow out of my capture, being taken prisoner. I was released because of the Brazzaville Protocol a year after the protocol was signed. But that's where everything stopped. That's where the withdrawal of the Cubans was discussed, the withdrawal of the South Africans, the end of the war, the final battle so that everybody could return home as winners, where the independence of Namibia was discovered or discussed. It all happened there. And then it brings me back to the question why the operation was being done. Because whoever selected Cabinda Gulf as a target did right. But who said we must attack that target? That was wrong. Right. You don't attack your only ally's target. And that's the question that is mainly there. And because of the limitation that was put on the operation that we must not what as you call it, compromise the seaboard capability of the Navy, in other words, the Daphne submarines. Because according to Jane's fighting ships, the Daphne could not operate that far from base. But of course, the Boer are different. They have modified that little Daphne submarine that even the French who built it wouldn't recognize it, or the capabilities it can do. So yes, we could operate there. But then you must ask, why was all the other operations done not with the same conditions? A year after I was captured, in June of 1986, they attacked Namibia harbor, also from the seaside, not with, via or wayside, but directly from the sea. Why was it then a problem? Why was it only a problem in Cabinda? Bottom line is, I got captured there and 2 guys got killed. Of course, the imprisonment was very difficult. Of course, it was a very hard time, a lot of uncertainty. I was rebellious during my time there, rebellious against my creator, against God. I was difficult. I felt strapped down, locked in a little cell. I mean, I was in solitary confinement for 837 days. And that's, I don't think people can understand what it means to sit for 837 days in solitary confinement in a small room just by yourself. And the people squealed over lockdown. I mean, it's not a patch, really, but okay. So eventually, I was visited by a Frenchman with the name of Jean-Yves Olivier, and Jean-Yves facilitated my release, or let's say it different, the exchange of prisoners, which happened in 1987, where I was swapped for 134 Fapla prisoners and a Frenchman and a Dutch guy. Jean-Yves Olivier did that, but Jean-Yves Olivier later on made a movie, and that movie is called I got it here somewhere, Plot for Peace. Plot for Peace. And that was premiered during the 25th anniversary of the signage of the Brazzaville Protocol. I was invited as a guest. And only at that time, and that's in 2014, where I realized what really has happened in Cabinda during this operation. Because Plot for Peace are telling the story, how they have negotiated to end the war, to end the peace, or to get the peace, to get the different parties to the conflict, to go back to their countries, the independence of Namibia, Everything is discussed in Plot for Peace. And but more than 50% about Plot for Peace is about me, who is sitting in prison. What have I done? I've attacked an American oil installation. I was being captured, put in prison. 2 of my men are dead. Just to find out that, listen, maybe this thing was planned. So that was extremely difficult for me, but it became clear to me, especially during the evening, during the state banquet. I was awarded the National Order of Merit of the Congo for the role I played in the so-called release of Nelson Mandela. I did nothing. I sat in prison. I wasn't even aware of this. So yes, of course, it's a lot of mixed emotions, but I put it all behind me. I'm angry at nobody and no one, and I think it was the Lord's way of telling me as well, Wukai, stop now, take a breath. Maybe there's something more for you to do.
No, it's difficult for people to even wrap their fingers around thoughts about this. I mean, I find it shameful, the conduct of governments in their retention of prisoners of war to use as political tools or to use for whatever purposes. I mean, at the end of the Second World War, the Soviets kept Germans and Romanians and Czechs and Poles, all kinds of Eastern Europeans who served in the Wehrmacht or the SS, in concentration camps and gulags out in the tundra, and used them as slave labor for 10 years. Most of the German prisoners of war, the few who actually came back. So there were 91,000 prisoners of war captured at Stalingrad. Less than 5,000 of those men survived that decade in imprisonment and came back after 10 years of slave labor. I mean, many of them people were just conscripts. They were just people, and it's unfathomable. John McCain stayed in prison for like 6 or 7 years in solitary confinement in the Hanoi Hilton. You for well over 2 years. It's insane. This is ridiculous what they do to people. It's, the politicians are the one that makes these decisions, not the soldiers. So holding the soldiers accountable or holding them as prisoners is ridiculous. Now, were you kept in Luanda or elsewhere?
Now, I was captured in Cabinda, but I was held in Luanda.
No, that's what I mean. Were you kept? Were you held in Luanda?
Yeah,
yes.
in Luanda, okay. But in the military prison, yes. The Cuban military prison.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
So there's a couple comments from Rita Anderson. I just want to get those very quickly before I forget about them. She said earlier that her husband served aboard the Daphne subs. He said he went to France to train on them. Of course, well, they were from France. That's where South Africa got them from. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe you ran into her husband out there, Rita Anderson's husband, on one of these missions. Who knows? And then she just said again, she says, all respect to you, Wynand, you paid a huge price. He did. He paid a tough price. Obviously, as a soldier, as an officer, he took lawful orders, but it sounds as if you thought the mission was not the right mission. We shouldn't be. South Africa shouldn't be attacking its one ally, but you did the mission because it was ordered, it was legitimate, and you paid the price while the politicians sat in their leafy suburbs and enjoyed their rooibos tea every day while you were stuck up there in Luanda.
Yeah, many people has asked me, Chris, but why didn't I refuse to do this operation, or why didn't I question my instructions? But that's not who we are. We have been brought up very disciplined, and we listen to the elders. We listen to our seniors. We trust them with everything in us. We wouldn't ask a question, and we will always reason that, well, they got a good reason why we must do it. And we won't argue that point. So if somebody has told you at that stage, yeah, I don't know whether to walk through a fire or something like that, but they are very close to that. We would have done anything without suspecting anybody of foul play or anything like that.
Well, I found myself in the first Gulf War as a young lieutenant because I'd been enlisted prior to that. And so now, after being in uniform for about 7 or 8 years, I was in combat for the first time. Fortunately, it was brief combat, but I was in combat for the first time. And before we rolled across the line of departure, I found myself, scratching my head at night, to myself, ruminating, why are we here? Is this right? Are we supposed to do this? But the bottom line is that there were lawful orders, and it was my responsibility to carry them out. And it doesn't really matter what I thought as a lieutenant. I didn't have a global view from a strategic perspective. And I realized that as a young man, which served me well learning that lesson and teaching it to myself. But the point of the story is that, of course, you remember the propaganda back then, if you paid attention to it, that it's all about oil. George Bush is trying to get the oil. They're going to steal all the oil. And then also the administration, from their angle said, well, it's, the Kuwaiti people are being oppressed. And I'm thinking to myself, I know about Kuwait. They were being oppressed by the Kuwaiti government itself before this war ever took place. So we're not exactly returning democracy here. But at the end of the day, I was like, you know what? That's not my call. That's not why I'm here. That's not my mission. That's not my role. And eventually I came to grips with it and said, you know what? This is the job. You got to get it done. And I suspect that was probably a lot of went through your head back in Cabinda.
Yeah, very definitely. But I think we are still bearing the results of that sort of not submissiveness, but listening to the elders, people. Because even now, if the government say you are wearing masks, then we are wearing masks, while the greater population don't listen because they don't have being brought up like that. The only people that is listening is the people who is behaving.
Well, so I'd have to say, too, the other reason why it's not happening, and this is, I don't think that people can genuinely debate this, but the SAPs and SANDF were sent into Kaitata, into Alexandria, into Soweto, into townships and rural areas to enforce the separation, the physical, all that at the outset. But then they murdered Collins Kosa and about a dozen other black South Africans and got bad press, and whoa, they pulled back. Suddenly, the SAPs and SANDF are only patrolling the leafy suburbs of Cape Town and Pretoria and Joburg and Sandton City and arresting people for sitting on a beach or surfing and criminalizing 250,000 South Africans, most of whom were white or colored, by the way. And the police minister's gleeful about it. Hey, we've arrested 250,000 lawbreakers. Meantime, gender-based violence, daily murders of 60 South Africans, plus more farm murders continue unabated, although they were slowed during the lockdown. But with the lifting of the lockdown, it continues endlessly. And this government's all proud of the fact that they've criminalized people for nursing a child on a beach. It's unbelievable what's happened in South Africa under this coronavirus nonsense.
Yeah. But the coronavirus came as a black swan to the ANC government, in the sense that they now can use the virus to disguise the mistakes they have made and the money that is gone and why the country is economically failing. But we are sitting in a situation that it has accelerated the decay in the government, the economic rundown, and soon the whole country is going to be out of money. And then maybe it will become our black swan.
Could be. Listen, I've got to give you something here because it's always nice when someone that has past experience with you, of course, a comrade in arm, a brother in arm, pipes in here. So I'll let you verify if this is true. But I got this comment from DeVault. Now, that doesn't help me out because there's lots of DeVault out there. But DeVault says, I was part of a medical team that operated on him later and removed the metal pin from his shoulder, smuggled beer into his room, and handed him his first beer in close to 900 days. So he's saying that, Wynand, you owe him a beer. Does this sound like a true story?
Well, if you know about the operation on my shoulder to remove the pin, okay, you could have read about it somewhere, but I will give him the benefit of the doubt, and I'm quite willing to buy him a beer if he comes around in this area.
Excellent. That's brilliant. So there was a question for Brett Sessens, who's an American who lives in Mississippi, and he's pretty well informed in Africa. And Brett said, did you ever get a chance, or did you ever, he didn't say chance, that's my words, did you ever fight against the Cubans in the Bush War at all? Did you encounter them other than in prison?
Yeah, on several occasions. But I really learned to know them well while I was in person, because then I was in daily contact with them it was mostly their interrogators who questioned me after the initial stages where the Russian guys was running the show, and then the Cubans sort of continuing with it. And I very, very seldomly saw any Angolans.
Listen, Vine, I have to take issue with that. I mean, listen, I've read all the media. I've been informed. I've been told there were no Cubans, no Russians, no East Germans in Angola. So I know you're making this story up, right? This is not true.
Yeah, it sounds like deja vu at the moment, because that I've heard before as well. But now, interesting. I met a guy about 2 years ago, and his name is Klaus. And he was in the East German army. And he was in Angola. And he is now also serving on with one of our Memorial Order of the Tin Hat clubs there in Edenvale. And Klaus tells me the most marvelous stories from their side when they were in Angola. So in 1975, when we were advancing towards Luanda, just before we were stopped, they already received orders to destroy all documents, which they did, and move to the airport to be flown out of Angola. And in that time was when we received the command to turn back. And they was literally taken off the plane to go back to work. But some marvelous stories, and I said, Klaus, you must be grateful and thankful that I never got you into my sights.
Because you were a good shot. You know, I was just out in Wyoming, and one of the things we did on that Special Operations Forces Veterans trip is that they arranged for cowboy action shooters, actual cowboys, that come out with Winchester 73 rifles and revolvers and shotguns, and you go through this, you know, it's like a range, but you have these targets you shoot at, and they give you a specific sequence and such. While I had a little trouble with revolvers because I'm accustomed to a 45 or 9mm, you know, and just firing that, doing the revolver is very different because it's kind of like a cowboy western thing. So I missed the same target out of 5 targets every single table with my revolver. But with the Winchester 73, man, I was Annie Oakley. Boom, 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 boom. I hit every target dead center every time. So I'm guessing you were a good shot. So it's a good thing that Klaus didn't run into you out there in the bush. But Peter Mate says that you were sold out by political masters. I think that most of us could probably agree with that without any exception. And now Devald is asking another question of you, Wynand. He said, ask Wynand if I can come and meet him when I'm in the Southern Cape again. I have his number. Well, you've got his number. Unless you're being shy and don't want to disturb him, then I guess I'll let you send him a text and work that out.
Chris, yeah, if there's time available, I will see him. But I am being approached many times lately by provocateurs, guys who wanted to sell me stuff that I don't want to. So to protect myself, I have cut down a lot on seeing people that I do not know.
Yeah.
And it's not being funny or this or that, but I got to protect myself as well.
Absolutely. No, it's smart. I've taken steps on the channel here, you know, to protect people's privacy and also to avoid that sort of thing. There's always, I'm not talking about you, Devald, but you're probably a perfectly legitimate person, was part of that surgical team. We're not talking about that. But there are certain measures people have to take. It's dangerous. I mean, and we'll talk in a moment, if you can hang around a little bit longer, about how dangerous things can be in South Africa. But listen, folks, you're listening to Chris Wynand Africa on the Indaba Africa channel here live on YouTube. I'm Chris, a retired U.S. Army colonel in central Pennsylvania. My guest is former South African Defense Officer, retired Lieutenant Colonel Wynand du Toit, who was a prisoner of war in Angola. We were just talking about that experience. We talked about running a little bit longer if you're able to. Do you still have time to stick with us for a little bit longer? Because there's so many things we could talk about.
Yeah, but
Okay.
I'm quite willing.
All right, well, we'll do a few more questions. And remember what I told you before the stream, I don't understand what it is with my stream and interviews, but at the top of the hour, the audience always surges. About 15 minutes before the hour, we had about 215 people. And as the hour approached, now we're almost at 300 people watching currently. I don't know why people come in so late. Maybe the notifications don't go out. But thank you to the approximately 300 people currently watching the stream. We really appreciate your patronage on the channel. So let me go ahead and ask a few more questions that I really want to get here. So Now, you retired from the force in what year?
In 1990.
1990. Okay. So as all of this stuff was going on with the new administration under F.W. de Klerk and the new dispensation moving towards Codesa and then the elections in 1994. And now we know that you're a published author. That's a recent development. And you're a motivational speaker. You've also been a farmer in Congo, Brazzaville. That had to be interesting. We'll save that for a future conversation unless you want to talk about it briefly. But what have you been doing with your life beyond that? Have I covered all the bases, or are there other things I've missed about your post-service occupational life?
Yeah, well, I've been a truck driver for quite a long time, also 2.5 years, sort of, and I've that has moved over into a little bit of a transport business, which is did cross-border from Namibia to Angola. I was also involved in a security company, but they became a little bit difficult because of who I am. Yeah, at the stage, I even went into building, construction, building houses. I built quite a lot of houses. But then a certain two Lehman Brothers in America, they made some shit in the world in 2008, 2009. And my business was one of those that did not survive those impacts. And that was actually when I seriously had to look at something else. And that's when I went back to farming and left with all the other guys in 2011 to Brazzaville, Congo.
You know, it's interesting. I think, obviously, you know about this, but not a lot of people know the history of Afrikaners and Boers in Africa. I mean, they know South Africa, and maybe they know a little bit about Namibia, and maybe even those better informed have heard of the Dorsland trekkers who went through Bechuanaland or Botswana, the Kalahari, and trying to get to Angola. But there are Afrikaner farmers in Kenya, a group of them who went up there at the beginning of the 20th century after the Boer War and still live there to this day. There are some who've relocated to Nigeria more recently. We've seen some go to Georgia in the former Soviet Union. But I don't know many who've gone to the Congo Brazzaville, so I'm going to have to say bravo for you. That's a new one on me. Are there any other Afrikaners up there floating around in Congo Brazzaville?
Yeah, you will be surprised where you find some South Africans. But everywhere in Africa, you must be careful to talk Afrikaans and think nobody is going to understand you, because almost everywhere you will walk into a guy that understands quite well. But yes, I've also farmed in Namibia, here in South Africa as well, and in Angola. Quite a few years in Angola, and I end up farming now in Brazzaville, Congo. But in the end, finance was my big issue, and the fact that the farm was now, when we arrived there was nothing. It was absolutely jungle, just bush. Yeah. And after everything was built, the stores, the house, and everything that was needed on the farm, the infrastructure was there, generator, lights, everything. And I got 300 hectares cleared, and I plant corn, and I even planted rice there. Then one day a minister arrived on the farm, and they actually give me 5 hours to be gone, which I successfully succeeded in to stop the effort to get rid of me. But eventually, I realized that they keep on coming back to me with the same type of warnings, and I realized that they are going at some other stage and take the farm. So when my book started doing better than my farming, that's when I started, but that's when I realized it's time to call it a day, and came back to South Africa.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, if your books are outselling you what you can produce on the farm, why not try something different?
Yeah, but I'm very fortunate with my books as well, you know, and it all started with that because I had to get this book into the market, because I can't wait for publisher to decide when they want to give out a book and if they want to give out a book. So I got to get the book out there so that it can make money. That's what it's all about. But by the way, I have been accused by a guy that I'm only selling the books to make money. But that's exactly the point. You want to make money with your books. And so I actually went from place to place, organized some veteran organizations, which I have then met up with and gave a little speech and a little this or that. But I very soon realized that you must give a person something that he can take home. And that's not only the story about your story. You have to motivate him, to give him something to look forward to believe in, or to give him hope, especially in a country like South Africa. Yeah. So although I put a lot of emphasis on the problems in the country, the dangers in the country, I warn about it, I try to give solutions for it, I still want people to feel motivated and to feel that there is a light in the end of the tunnel. So that's when the motivational speeches started happening and growing more and more. My program for this year was fully booked, and then lockdown came. And that's when we realized, well, how are we going to survive this? Because there's no way how we can sell the books. And my latest one about the Special Forces came out just as lockdown started. And my wife told me, why don't you launch the book on YouTube? And that was probably a first, but we did launch it on YouTube. And that night, it was a live thing, and I had 7 guys watching. Mm-hmm. And the next morning, I sort of feel, well, maybe I should say something more. Mm-hmm. And that developed into an everyday thing. At the present moment, today, I've just turned over to 9,000 subscribers from start of lockdown until now. And so that has opened a complete new market for us. People have started buying books online from us, and I'm not spending half the time on the road that I used to be. And all of a sudden, when we thought, for us, it's the end of the line, it opens up a completely new world for selling the book. So we were very lucky as far as that is concerned. And now I'm using this 10 minutes every morning with just a little bit of warning, advice, and and try to keep people motivated, encourage them with the condensed milk, of course.
With the condensed milk. Okay. Well, I'm going to do a little housekeeping, get through a bunch of comments in the chats because a lot coming in. I don't want to stretch you out here forever because you've got things to do as well. But I'll get to those comments in just a second. Yeah, a similar situation for me, Wynand. I started doing the live streams because I was concerned about isolation and suicides and people's mental health in South Africa in particular. And so my live streams have a heavy focus on South Africa, but of course I cover all of Africa, the U.S. and other actors in Africa. But I started talking about U.S. politics because most of my South African viewers want to hear about U.S. politics. So I talk about that a lot too. But I really started my live streams in mid-April, but really started a regular daily one at the end of May. So I've grown about 8,300. So you've got me outpaced there. I'm going to have to catch up with you. So if you're a subscriber to Wynand du Toit's channel, subscribe to my channel.
Yeah, it's the other way around. But you must know there's a reason for that. Né? I'm a lieutenant colonel.
Oh, that's right. They don't trust the full birds. Anyway. All right, so let me just catch this very quickly, a few comments, and then we'll shift to the current situation, and we'll wrap up here so we don't stay here all day. But Nzu Africa said, I did my stint in the Congo. Many Afrikaners in Mbuji Maye. Mbuji Maye, I don't know where that's at. But then Kelvin Gilbert asked a question to ask you about Second World War generals' comments about Boer folk. We'll hold that. I'm not sure what that's about. And then he says, then Ron van Rijmen, who's in the Netherlands, pointed out that the text describes this session as Major du Toit. Yes, that's correct, folks. I mentioned at the beginning of the stream, and since then a couple of times, there are conflicting information about his background, and we had not had a chance to talk until just before the stream. And so we didn't know each other until today. So I will correct that. He is retired lieutenant colonel from the South African Defense Force. So that'll be fixed after the stream. So thank you for that. And then Andres Root says, shout out to Wynand. I will see you in a week. Major retired. See, someone just said Major retired. I just gained a lot of respect for you and your knowledge of the Boer. Well, that's awesome. And Sentinel Project says, I think he left the SADF as a major. He was in the Boer Mog. No, he was not in the Boer Mog. I think that's fake news. I'm not aware of your participation. The Boer Mog was declared a terrorist organization, and this gentleman is anything but that. He was not involved with the Boer Mog. And then Andre Jacob says, now he asked a question. You don't have to answer this. OPSEC is always important, operational security. But Andre Jacob says, please ask Wynand if he'll be going to the Volks meeting in Lichtenburg in October. I don't know if you want to answer that or not, but there's no need to answer that. But
yes. No, let me answer that.
Okay.
No, I'm not going there, Chris. I'm not going to attend it. And the answer is simple. I believe that this must be natural.
Yeah.
It will be a natural flow of things. And I also feel that the time is not right for that. I've done a tremendous lot of preparation for whatever might be coming to South Africa. There is no use for me going to Lichtenburg in the next couple of days. And anyway, 75% of the people attending will probably be agents for
the intelligence services.
Services, yes.
Well, that sounds a lot. That sounds a lot like the
Burgermark guys. The Burgermark guys.
Yeah.
That ended up in prison.
Yeah.
They also went there to attend a meeting like that.
Yep.
And within a couple of weeks after that, they were arrested. So Lichtenburg is not necessarily a good place, but there's guys that feel they must do it, and I respect that. Originally, a while back, yes, I would have attended, but I've meanwhile changed my mind on it.
Well, sorry to interrupt you there. I talked over you for a moment, but what I was going to say is the Boer Mog. Of course, I was an intelligence analyst back in those days. But when the Boer Mog was together, I remember the ANC making a lot of noise publicly and discreetly about how they were a threat to the very existence of the government. And we were talking about a couple dozen people max. There were more intelligence agents at their meetings than there were Boer Mog members. And so your comment is well received. I suspect that'll be the case in Lichtenburg. So folks, be careful what you say and do, because your actions can have consequences, even if you have no malicious intent. You just have to be careful, because things can be painted very much out of perspective. But let's shift very quickly, because we're running out of time here. Last night, yet another horrific story of a plasmoord that took place in the Free State, near Paul Roux, I think it was, not too far from Bethlehem. A 21-year-old farm manager was obviously stopped in his bucky on the way home after leaving his father's farm. Not a farm owner, mind you, and not someone born when we were born, when apartheid was the law of the land. A 21-year-old born 5 years after the end of apartheid, during the new dispensation, during majority rule, nothing to do with any of this whatsoever. Doesn't even own a farm. He was a farm manager, and he was stopped. He was tortured, he was stabbed repeatedly, head wounds, and then he was hung from a pole. A 21-year-old man, Brendan, I'm sorry, his last name escaped me there just a moment. I did a video on this a little while ago. But Brendan was murdered last night in the Free State, and his father and his girlfriend found his body early this morning in South Africa. This 60 people a day dying in this country, pregnant women, 8 months pregnant, black women being stabbed and hung from a pole as well outside of Pretoria. The callous disregard for life by the ANC is something that I think people need to stop covering up and start talking about. I've been talking about it for months. I've been talking about it privately for years, but now that I'm no longer serving, I have freedom of speech once again. So I'm talking about this. So there's a lot of nonsense going on in South Africa that affects all South Africans. So Wynand, your thoughts on this phenomena of farm murders and violence in South Africa?
It is a growing thing, and it will become more and more. I mean, if you look at and you see what the leaders are saying, firstly, let's talk about the ANC. Their leaders are saying, well, we must eradicate white economics, colonial economics. We must go back to Africa economics. So by doing that, they are saying, well, the white people are not actually part of our economy anymore. We don't want them there. And then the other thing is they blame all the mistakes on apartheid. They blame their mistakes on colonialism. And there is a general perception in Africa that white people have. No matter where you travel in Africa, if you are white, people will come and ask you for money.
I know.
Yeah. So now we are sitting with instigation, negation, marginalization, and all those things, as well as the perception that it's actually our fault that all these things has happened or is happening to them. The largest part of the black population, the youth, that's the problem area. They never knew how it was in apartheid. So all they know about us is what they are being told by other people. So whenever the day when there's nothing left, the day when they don't have food because there's no money to pay the social grants, when there's no money to give food parcels, then how is the people going to survive? Where are they going to get food? They are going to be hungry. They are going to storm the spaza shops, then later on the shopping centers, the bigger shops, everything, and they're going to raid it. And when that is gone, they're going to turn their attention to the white people, because a white person he got. During this lockdown, I've overheard a colored woman saying, well, we don't stock up. We will just go and take it from the white people because they stock up. So there's the problem that we are sitting with. At some or other states, every white person's house is going to be like a little shop, an invitation to come and get what they want, because a white man has. And that's the perception that exists throughout Africa. And now other leaders like Julius Malema were saying, kill the farmer, kill the boer, who some days ago even made the ridiculous statement that they have even built the mountains and the rivers in South Africa. Then we must realize that anarchy is coming to South Africa. And when anarchy broke out in South Africa, where are we going? Because then the government is not going to be able to protect us. They can't protect us now. So somehow we must sort of put an emergency plan in place. We cannot live and think nothing is going to happen. Oh, everything will come right. It's not that bad. And every move that Ramaphosa is making, you will hear people saying, okay, now it's certainly showing his true colors. He's actually playing a game. Yeah, he's playing a game. But that game plan has not changed since the ANC took over. It's the same game plan. In the end, there's no place for us. And when they lose control over the masses, and they lose control over the police and the military because they don't have money, then we are in deep trouble, very deep trouble. If only I can get people so far as to realize that at least you must have some sort of emergency plan in your head. People are buying motor vehicle insurance. Why? In case they bump their car. They're buying life or medical insurance. Why? In case they get sick. What do you have in place if anarchy breaks out in South Africa? Nothing. And all I ask is, get a plan in place as insurance. Yeah. If it happens. If you can get people just to realize that, then it was good enough.
Absolutely. There's a comment from Willem Janssen van Rensburg who says, do not agree with Wynand there. I know a lot of starving whites may lost their jobs. No, Wynand is not saying that all whites are wealthy. What he's saying is there's perception amongst a lot of South Africans that the people who stockpile things, the people that have resources, are white. And so they become legitimate targets in the minds of those people to steal from. And to reinforce that, Erica said a couple months ago when she had someone come in to help her when she was ill, the woman took one look at her small stock of food and insisted that Erica give her food to take home or she would steal it. So, I mean, that's the mindset. So Wynand is not implying that all white South Africans are wealthy, not even by remote stretch, particularly these days when lots of born frees are being denied opportunity at education, denied employment simply on the basis of being white. The rampant, vile, disgusting, discriminatory racism in place in South Africa against minorities, whites in particular, but also against coloreds and Indians, but especially against whites, is vile and should be called out for what it is. We have someone here earlier who sent out 100 resumes and not got a single call back. I don't care how stupid you are, no matter how many places you apply, you're bound to get at least 5 callbacks from 100 resumes that go out. That's ridiculous. 100 CVs go out, you get no calls. Why? Because he's white. That needs to stop. And it's unbelievable how the world can turn its back on people over their skin pigmentation because we didn't turn our backs when black folks were being discriminated against, and it disturbs me when folks do it against others. It's really frustrating, Wynand.
Yeah. Just to add on that, I said the perception exists that all whites got.
Exactly. That's right. Perception. That's what I was saying. It's a perception amongst folks. It's not necessarily the reality. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. So, as for instance, we just saw Edward Neumeister, a Austrian who became a South African, who's been in South Africa for 40 years, had a German-themed Bavarian restaurant in KZN, and he was beaten to death with a panga. So severely crippled, he had a mortal wound. He was bleeding out of his artery, and he managed to stumble back in the kitchen, which gave his partner, he's 67 years old, gave his partner time to escape while he was butchered and hacked to death over 200 times. He was so disfigured that his daughter couldn't even identify his body. This is utter nonsense, and he was robbed because he lived in a rural area. It was perceived that he had wealth. He didn't have wealth. The restaurant was going bankrupt because they'd been closed for 3 months under lockdown, yet he was murdered for a perception that he had wealth, and that's the danger.
It's so true, Chris.
Yep. Well, listen, we could go on forever. There's so many things, but I would like to get back and invite you back on the channel because I'm very curious about when you learned about bushcraft, whether it was the Bushmen, the San who were teaching that, which I suspect. I also want to find out if in my collection of Peter Stiff books, if you appear in any of those books, or maybe under a pseudonym, if he's talked about your experiences. And we didn't really get into the Sightlanders. You have an association with them, and I think maybe we get a chance to get you back on and talk about that if you'd like to talk about it. And if you're interested, I'll offer to come on your program. I don't know if you host guests or not, but I'd be happy to come on and talk about Africa if you'd like. So,
because I think you are far more advanced in that department than I am. I'm a little bit handicapped with technology as well. You know, I succeeded in taking a video and place it onto YouTube. You know, but I would not know how to get a Zoom meeting live onto YouTube.
All right. Well, there you go. That's no problem. But you're welcome to come back on my channel if you'd like to come back. I'd love to. There's so much more we could unpack.
Oh, that would be great. I'm quite willing.
So listen, I want to thank the over 300 people, concurrent viewers, and the now almost 1,300 people who've tuned in during the stream. Thank you so much. Obviously, I need very interesting guests for people to tune into my show. Some of my shows recently, I've been wondering, maybe my interviews aren't good or the guests aren't good, but obviously this is a guest that people want to hear from. So my many, many thanks to my guest today, Wynand du Toit. retired lieutenant colonel from the South African Defense Force, a former truck driver, which I didn't know. I discovered that. A motivational speaker, a published author, a farmer, and just it seems like an all-around great guy. It's a pleasure to have gotten a chance to meet you in this conversation before this and after this. And before you go, you've been wearing a cap the whole time, which I haven't commented on, the Kapline. So I'm going to let people in on a little secret. When he goes off screen, I'll do my close up and wrap, and then we're going to treat you to Bok van Blerk's song, Die Kapline, about the Bush War in Southwest Africa. So any closing comments or thoughts from you, Wynand, that you'd like to share with the audience?
Chris, I just want to remind everybody listening about where we are coming from. We have seen many times in our history farms destroyed, livings destroyed, and careers destroyed. And every time we have bounced back as a nation. And we will bounce back again. It does not matter what they throw at us and how many measures they put in place to suppress us. We will bounce back. No matter how big the threat, no matter how big the danger, we will survive. But then we must use our God-given heads. We must use our brains, and of course, we must trust in our Creator with all our hearts.
Well said, Wynand. That's fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, my special feature guest today on a Lekker Lekker Freitag, and this was fantastic. One of the most enjoyable interviews I've had. And as we talked about beforehand, it was a conversation. We had a conversation, and I think that made it awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and thank you. I'll give you a chance to wave goodbye there, Wynand, and I'm going to put you in the waiting room. You can drop off. I'll give you a call shortly, just touch base, but I need to close out the show. So thank you so much for joining me today. It was a pleasure. All right, put him out there. Ladies and gentlemen, that was my special feature guest today, Wynand du Toit, retired lieutenant colonel from the South African Defense Force, public speaker, motivational speaker, published author, very accomplished man, and commercial farmer all over Africa, in Angola, in Namibia, in the Congo, Brazzaville, and in South Africa. Folks, that was absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for tuning in on a Friday. I will do a light stream in a little over 2 hours for the Night Owls edition. We'll wrap up and discuss the conversation we had here. And I'm going to close this show with a song that truly is something that really resonates with me. It always has since the first time I saw it. So let me call it up here, ladies and gentlemen. This is an amazing song. This is from Bok van Blerk, and this pays tribute to those who serve. Whoops, hang on a second. That should not be there. I got to fix that. Zoom all participants. What's going on there? Oh, I know why. It's because I went from the full window. So this is, let me get back here very quickly. Where are we at? There. Why is it not? There we go. I'm not getting full window here. That's why. Full screen. Yeah, anyway, sorry about that, folks. So I'm going to close you with Bok van Blerk. I hope you enjoy this. It's called Die Kapline, and this is in honor of those who served in the Bush War in Southwest Africa, whether it was in Namibia, then Southwest Africa, or Angola. Folks, here you go. This is from Bok van Blerk. Please enjoy this, and catch me later on or catch me tomorrow on the channel. Thank you so much for that, folks.